And welcome back to part 20 of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where today we're finishing off the Obelisk. We're 118 floors high, but we're getting there. And this isn't even technically it. We'll be returning to the Obelisk much later in the game, very briefly to get some stuff, but that's not until much later. But when you proceed up here, the reason why there's a save point just there is because you're going to be approaching the actual main boss event here. But there's a last piece of the puzzle you got to do with the glowing sphere and the moon puzzle. So tap the switch and it will bring it back to 0, or the new moon. And what you need to do is trigger the system in a way where you'll go from the right door to the middle door to the left door. Because each door is a boss, but you need to do all 3 bosses in one cycle.
So, have you figured out how the puzzle works? I am Clotho, the youngest of the Moire sisters. I shall wind the thread of your life.
The idea here is that you need to be able to fight all 3 of the Moire sisters without the puzzle doing a full loop of a moon cycle. Because if it goes back around to new moon, the puzzle deactivates and it will drop you below. And to be fair, the getting up and around is very easy. The drop is like right next to the stairs back up to this bit, so don't stress if you get it wrong. But you need to essentially work counterclockwise. You need to start from the right and work left. This boss does have Mahama, so it might be a good idea to bring a Magatama that is immune to light. I do, just because it saves a hassle. The main thing that makes this fight particular and annoying, though, is that Clotho's default hit and evasion rate is annoyingly high. You're going to see I'm going to be making an effort to boost the hit invasion and lower hers, but I still end up missing more often than not anyway. Like, it's kind of aggravating, and like it's something that will carry over later, because when you go through this fight, you'll learn very quickly this isn't the main fight. When you fight each of the sisters, when their health is depleted, instead of dying, they run away. And they do that because then if you kill 2 of them, but then mess up the puzzle, well, the other 2 can just come back and you fight them again. You have to do all 3 of them in one go, so they have to make a way that they can make it so you keep on having to do all 3 of them. Once you've beat all 3 of them, though, the puzzle remains done, so if you leave to go save or recover and come back, you won't have to worry about doing it again. But once you get a hit and evasion down and yours up, you're pretty alright. Even when she's using, like, starts healing herself, we're doing the damage she just healed again in a single hit, pretty much. Diorama's a little annoying, though. She thinks she doesn't have Diorahan, can you imagine? But it's why I'm mostly just spamming. Because, like, well, she's not going to be a threat now. I can just auto. Also, I forget to do it until, like, just when I've been recording over the weekend. But I completely forgot that the triangle is not the only quick action in this. Triangle will do the auto fight, but you can also press square and it will auto pass. Just don't hold it, otherwise you'll skip multiple turns. But if you can, like, if there's like a particular teammate that is only specifically helpful at some points, like say they're a healer, or you've only got them around to do buffs and nerfs, and those buffs still stand, you can just press square every time it's their turn, so then to scroll down to pass, or tap up once and click pass. But for this one, you want to go like back and forth on this button, and then go straight up so it will land on full moon as you go to the middle.
I will not allow you past here. I am Lachesis, the second of the Moire sisters. I measure the length of life. Your thread is reaching its end.
After Clotho comes Lachesis. Lachesis is the nerfer. When we get into the main fight, where you fight all 3 of them at the same time, you should be using these fights to work out which one you want to target first. For me personally, the order we're doing right now is kind of the order I go for. Which is I go for the healer, then I go for the buff and debuff, and then I go for the attacker. Because the third one is the much more aggressive force of the 3 and will be pushing to kill us far more than the others. She also has Tetrakan and Makarakan, which is reflects all physical or reflects all magic. So kind of be wary of that as it goes round. But I just save up the hassle and Warcry her. But speaking of where I am in my recording, I mentioned in the last video where I recorded it on Friday, but it would have uploaded today, Monday, and, well, yesterday by the time this one comes up. It's a confusing world, but stick with me. I mentioned before that I try and record ahead and try and keep you guys updated just so you know whether I'm on top of recording and whatnot, or if there's a point where it's stopping me, or just so I make sure I stay ahead, essentially. I said on that last video that over the course of the weekend I was going to try and get as much done as humanly possible so it can just kind of be done. Yes, I have finished recording this game. I have finished the game over the weekend, so everything is good recording-wise. I just need to edit and then add my commentary as we go. But everything should be good to keep up going until the end. And to my surprise, it's under 40 videos. Not by much, but it's under 40. And I was like, huh, okay. I think it's like 37 or 38 videos it's looking like right now. It might be slightly less by the time I edit it all down, but we'll see. But yeah, it's... I make more progress quicker than I assumed. Like, I know how much is left of the game beyond here. Like, I knew where I was when I was recording this, and I knew I still had a while to go. But I forgot that once you, like, just how much it can fly by when you know what you're doing. Because I've said it before, my first playthrough is around 60 hours. My finished playtime on this playthrough is around 40. And keep in mind, that's not counting... Well, that will be counting times where I've been reading through my notes and just sat at a save. Where when I've done practice runs of a dungeon beforehand, I make notes on some of them that are more complicated to make sure I know where I'm going. There'll be points where I'll stop and just read through my notes to make sure I know where I'm going for the whole next section. Usually between save points, which is why at a lot of save points starting with the Obelisk, you'll notice a slight cut every time I go to save. Because all I do is when I save my game, I sit at it and read through my notes to make sure I know, to remind myself of where I'm going next. And I can safely say because of this, of now we've finished, I said at the very start of this journey that there'd be a couple times where I might be tempted to use a guide. Throughout the entire course of the game, I used a guide once. And I'll point out exactly when we get there. But Lachesis is down, so there's only one more sister left. So we need to make it a 4 again, because it's going to keep on ticking over back round. So as we get to the left door. Which way you can kind of see the path already. But you can see, it takes me a minute to think about it, but you can kind of already see the path you need to do. Because you know that 3 in the corner's a death sentence. There's no way you're getting to it without passing the limit.
Were you able to keep up with Kagutsuchi? I am Atropos, the eldest of the Moire sisters. How unlucky of you to meet me. I cut the threads of fate. In other words, your fate is already sealed.
Atropos is very much the aggressor of the Moire sisters. When you get into the fight with her, she'll be the one that'll be the most focused in just hurting you. Which is why she's kind of the bottom of your list of priorities, because she's the most basic. Like, you know what to expect from her compared to the others. And so if you decide to go for her first, you're kind of just going to make it more awkward for yourself, because the healer and the buffer are just going to work their magic. So like I said, the order you are expected to do this for the puzzle is kind of the order I'd recommend you fight them when we fight them together later in the video. Also, now that I have finished my recording for the game, I can say that I only game overed twice in the entire duration of the journey, and both of them were from unexpected bullshit. One of them was an instant kill specifically targeting me, and the other was a back attack where the enemy crit hit me and then attacked me again. And then attacked me again. And it just, like, it only targeted me, and it got a crit in the middle of it, so it got an extra turn. And it just refused to care about anyone else and only attacked me. And so I just got bum rushed before I had a chance to do anything. But the fact that the only 2 deaths I got on this playthrough are Nocturne moments are something I will take proudly. Because that's not something that will happen often. Especially if you're new to this game, you sure as shit would have died like a dozen times. Minimum. before you even get anywhere close to where we are, right, what you're watching now. There's a lot of moments where the Matador would probably have killed you, Dante would have killed you, 4 probably would have killed you a couple times. Unless you've been spending a lot of time in the Culpa, then maybe you would have been fine. Like, there's a lot of instances. Like, I know not every encounter is made equal. There are certainly some bosses you're gonna steamroll, like Ose. But you would have died a lot more than this. But because this isn't my first run, I died a lot less. But even saying that, I'm still happy that I managed to, go through the whole game and only die to questionable moments, and not because the boss was too hard or my strategy wasn't good enough. There's something very satisfying about that. Doesn't stop a couple bosses from being close. Like, I'll say that right now. There's a couple fights later on that got very dangerously close. And if you've played this game before, you probably already know what bosses I'll be talking about. That can just be a real late game hassle, regardless of your skill level. And I am also aware that I'm playing on normal, and so there are certain parts of the challenge that aren't as exaggerant as they are on hard. If you play this game on hard, it's very much a different beast. Even some basic encounters can kick your ass.
We aren't letting you pass that easily. Do not underestimate us.
We 3 Moirai sisters will
Spin, measure,
and snip your fate!
But now it is time to fight the main boss of the Obelisk, all 3 of the Moirai sisters combined. As I've said before, Clotho is the healer, the one in white on the far right, so you probably want to deal with her first. And then just work your way left, because then it's the one that does buffs and debuffs, and then it's the central attacker. But that being said, after Clotho goes down, I guess it doesn't matter too much, as long as you're keeping on top of your own buffs and nerfs, so you can go for the main attacker and just leave what's left idly struggling for survival. Oh, I really hope that Marin Karen was targeted at Daisojo, because then I could take away all your turns. That being said though, Daisojo's Prayer is going to get some good work with skills like Marin Karen being used against us, because it gets rid of all status conditions as well, as I've said before. So you can really use that to your advantage to get some pain done. They see me use group-wide attacks quite often here, but all it ends up really achieving is baiting out more heals from Clotho. So it's usually actually a better idea to just prioritize and go directly. Also, be wary of the fact that it has magic boosting. Something that I never compensate for at any point throughout the entire duration of this game is magic stat boosting. Like, I'll do physical, I'll do defense, and I'll do hit and evasion, but not once in this journey do I pick up a specified magic boosting skill for members of my party. And it does end up dragging out fights that could be done a lot quicker later in the game, where they nerf the shit out of me, and I can rebuff everything on myself except magic. But of course, Dekaja and Dekunda can still help, the ones that nullify your nerfs or nullifies enemy buffs. But it only does so much compared to directly buffing magic. Especially later on when enemies are going to start using skills like Debilitate. And if you're not used to Atlas titles and so don't know what I'm talking about, Debilitate is a group-wide all stats lower by 1 level. So although it doesn't have the targeted assault of like Warcry, where it's like attack by 2 levels, or Fog Breath, which is like evasion by 2 levels, or Taunt, where it's defense by 2 levels, but they get 2 levels up in attack while they're at it, the Debilitate will just lower everything by 1 whole stage. So if you can get several team members with Debilitate, you can cut down the busy work by not only lowering how much damage they're dealing to you, but making them more vulnerable and making it so they miss. I don't really... to jump the gun as well, I never pick up Debilitate, but I end up having a demon that does. I just don't fuse it into anything because I'm more comfortable with the demons I have by the time we get to that point in the game. I like to just jump the gun a little on that bit of what I mean. But when enemies start using Debilitate on you, keeping on top of that as well with like your own buffs really starts to become a work of art. And it really starts to become something that becomes quite a struggle. And it's not like... Because there are... In SMT4, Shin Megami Tensei 4 infamously introduced a beautiful skill called Luster Candy. And it's a skill I really hope comes back in 5, and in some form or fashion starts to become more of a mainstay in the Atlas universe. Like, I know they probably won't keep it in Persona, because Persona you can only boost your stats by 1 level or lower than by 1 level, and they also only last 3 turns and aren't a permanent addition like they are in every other Atlas title. But Luster Candy is the opposite of Debilitate. It boosts all stats by 1, but it's group-wide. You can get skills that boost all stats by 1 that are single in Persona, but you can't get group-wide. And it's like, it's such a powerful skill to have. Luster Candy is beautiful. But the moment you get it and you're like, I can boost my entire party's entire stats by 1 level, and this is a magic skill, so I can keep using it, you never stop. You genuinely never stop. The moment you get a hold of it and you learn, it becomes an addiction, Candy. You just always use Luster Candy, because why wouldn't you? The only thing you have to deal with is that it has an extremely high MP cost. And so if you're not keeping on top of it with MP restorative items, you're burning like 120 to 150 MP per usage. Look at how much MP we have right now. And you can kind of see what I mean, where you really need to kind of make a dedicated magic demon if you plan on having Luster Candy on something. But speaking of SMT4, I mentioned before that I'd love to see SMT4 and 4A get a remaster at some point. If that ever happened, I would cover 4, but I don't know if I'd cover 4 Apocalypse. Like, the more I thought about it, because I've done like both 4 and 4 Apocalypse. I've done 4 several times actually, because I've got several of the endings. The only one I'm missing is the white ending, so I just couldn't be bothered to do that 4th playthrough to get the last ending. And Apocalypse I've done once, and that kind of starts to already lead into my point. I enjoy both immensely. In fact, for the gameplay mechanics, I enjoy Apocalypse more, because 4 introduces Smirk, and it's really poorly balanced, and in Apocalypse they balance it a lot better, so it feels more fair. Whilst in Base 4, Smirk just gets you killed all the time, because it makes it so enemies will dodge every single attack, and every single attack they perform will crit no matter what. And then with you, it feels like it's just a suggestion that he will get a crit, and just a suggestion that you will dodge the next attack. Whilst in Apocalypse, they made it far more consistent, like in game mechanic wise, so it became more fair and more fun. But that's not the problem I have with 4 Apocalypse. The problem I have with 4 Apocalypse is the final 2 dungeons of the game. Both of them aren't fun. The Giant Egg and the Outskirts of the Universe, or Yivi's Domain, neither of them are fun, in my opinion. Like, the Giant Egg takes forever, and has a lot of boss fights to spice it up, and it feels like the final dungeon of the game. And so I didn't mind it. In the same way, like, without spoiling it, the final dungeon of this game is ginormous. But there's a lot within it, so it never bothered me that it was so big, because there's a lot you're doing within. And in the Giant Egg, it's kind of the same deal, until you realise it's not actually the final dungeon. They just make this gargantuan dungeon that feels like it, for the sake of trying to trick you into thinking it's the final dungeon. It's literally just there to make you think it's the end. So then when it carries on afterwards, it's a twist, it's a surprise. But it ends up working against it, because when you know it's not the end, it's just this really bulky stepping stone to the actual final dungeon. It feels more tiring, it doesn't feel as interesting. You just sit there and you go, oh, alright. And most of the bosses in there are rematches against bosses you fought earlier in the game as well, which makes it even more problematic in terms of enjoyment, because it's bosses, although weaker versions of them, you still fought these bosses before for the most part until near the end, so you just want to get through it. But that ends up becoming just the opening act to the real final dungeon of the game, Yivi's Domain, or the Outskirts of the Universe. And that is horrifically gargantuan. It really is. Despite only being like 4 or 5 floors big, there are 4 or 5 floors that are so ridiculously stretched out in scale that you feel like an ant in a giant tower. It genuinely does. They've so supersized everything that it takes an eternity to get from one bit to the other of a said floor. And to the point it took me something like 9 or 10 hours on my playthrough to get through it. And the fact that it's a maze-like structure as well means it is very possible for you to take wrong turns and get stuck as you go. It just wasn't fun for me. And it's like the fact that both of the final dungeons of the games just were not enjoyable for me, despite the better gameplay mechanics. I just, after I'd done, was like, I enjoyed it, but I don't want to do it again for those last 2 dungeons. But we got the Magatama Jed as well, which is nice. And before we proceed onwards, I turn around and backtrack to show you what's around the corner, because this is actually be significant for later on in the game. Is that there's actually a background path here that will lead to loot that, don't worry if you don't get it now, it will be made far, far easier to get later on. There'll be a point where there'll be a different door available into the Obelisk that you can take, and if you take it, or do I let it continue? I'm terrified about losing Mediarama, which is why I hesitate to let it continue. And thankfully I don't. Toxic Sting goes, which is perfect. So I'm like, good, that can go. That's terrible skill anyway. But if you do decide to come down here now, instead of waiting until we come around later, there are 2 mystic chests, or mystical chests, in the corners that are next to you. So like the close left corner and close right corner. And there's also another lift in front of you as well, which I cut to. You'll see me after I open the second chest cut to it, but it's because I came back later. Like, I left and I was like, well, actually, no. I know there's nothing down there now, but I should still show that it's there. Because there's a nice little odd line of dialogue that's kind of just there for some reason. And when you see it, you go, okay. Also, we pick up Violet Flash as well, which is light damage, which is something that Persona waited until Persona 5 to try and tackle in any sense. Which is the instant kill elements, light and dark, can actually have damage dealing skills tied to them instead of only going for the instant kills. It's just they're not common. And it's something that's been a part of Shin Megami Tensei since pretty much the original, but for some reason it took till Persona 5 before Persona started acknowledging it. That's the cut, by the way, because I went away and then came back. But if you take this down further, there's another bit down here which you can access, but you can't really go anywhere with. And that line of dialogue is because I used a Nystoma, or a repulse spell. But if you go back here, there's a door to the outside world. If you fall from here, you will lose your life. Yeah, there's a door into the Obelisk, and it's not a window, it's a straight up door that's 132 floors up. Remember that for later. There's an interesting little thing with that. Remember that for later. Because if you do actually remember that that door specifically is there, you'll be rewarded for it much later in the game.
Thank you. I don't know why, but I had a feeling you'd come and save me. It's funny. I remember telling you all these things about how you could rely on me, yet here I am, relying on you instead. Turns out I'm completely powerless. How can I expect to shape the world when I can't even shape my own life? All I did as the maiden was follow Hikawa's orders. He told me I'd be the pillar of the new world, but not like this. In the end, I was nothing but a tool for collecting Magatsuhi. I knew the conception would come at a heavy cost, the price of the world itself. I knew, yet I went through with it regardless. And as it stands now, the new world is going to be a far cry from what I'd hoped. I dreamed of an ideal world where people were grateful to be alive. To be honest, I couldn't stand the way things were before. We claimed to want peace, yet nobody took any personal responsibility for the world's problems. We were selfish to the core. Not only that, we were miserable, though no one would admit it if you asked. Our indolence fed our complacence. And did anyone seek to better themselves or raise the bar for humanity higher? No, because they saw no value in it. That's how I saw the world. In my mind, a world like that might as well one day blink out of existence. No wonder I got manipulated by Hikawa. But the battle isn't over just yet. The world is still being recreated. Its shape is not yet fixed. And I discovered a goddess who can set things right. Not even Hikawa knows of her existence. She was drawn here by the power of Magatsuhi. Surely she can teach me the reason for creation.
Fool who bears the name of freedom, under the light of liberty, your wrongs shall be forgiven. I am Aradia. I have come from the far reaches of Amala. It is my duty to bestow freedom. Ask, and you shall be set free. If you deem yourself right, light will return to the world. But so will darkness. Pursue the way of creation. You yourself are a world too. Do not obey others. Do what you believe is right. This woman will soon recover her lost power. She will set forth on the path of creation, and I will guide her. Go, and see the world with your own eyes. From there will your creation begin.
Oh dear. Aradia has entered this world. This can only mean trouble, my little master. You should be very thankful. My little master has given me permission to enlighten you. Listen closely to what I am about to tell you. The time of creation for this vortex world is near. War will erupt amongst those who spread their reason in hopes of shaping the new world. As a demon, you are forbidden to conceive your own reason. Which reason will you side with? Which will you oppose? Will the reason you choose persevere or fail? Your suffering is my little master's delight. Struggle as hard as you can. You are free to follow whichever reason you like. My only wish is that you do not disappoint my little master with a dull ending.
Aradia is, in concept, one of the most interesting things about this game. Aradia is a false god. And in the Megaton universe, in Atlas Games universe basically, false gods don't mean they're fake, they mean they came from a universe that no longer exists and or is dead. So Aradia came from another realm that no longer exists, a universe that was destroyed. And I wish this game spent some time talking about that more, but it really doesn't. Depressingly, it doesn't spend any real time talking about it. We'll learn a little bit more about Aradia as the game goes on, but I wish they dug into what universe Aradia came from and how that universe came to die.
I could tell from here
But we got more
that
scenes yet.
Magatsuhi had returned to normal. Well, now that you showed the Neolo who the real demon is, Hikawa won't be able to make his move for a while. I think we can take a little breather. But how did you stop the nightmare system? Wasn't that Maiden operating it? So, Hikawa was using her, huh? Who knows what she'll do now? But at least the nightmare system is dead. Oh yeah, I know it might seem like I'm making you do all the work, but I'm doing what I can. Let me share with you what I've found out so far, okay? Alright, listen up. To create a new world, you need a strong idea of what kind of world you want to make. This idea is commonly referred to as a reason. Now, to acquire a reason, you have to receive divine protection from a god, and this is where the Magatsuhi comes into play. You need a large quantity of Magatsuhi in order to summon said god. That's why Hikawa, a human, was collecting Magatsuhi. Which reminds me, I met another human inside the Amala network just a minute ago. It was some guy who used to be held captive by the mantra. Do you know him? Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, it seems like he's a full-on resident of the Amala network now. If you're unlucky, you can get swept away somewhere, or even worse, the network will straight up absorb you. But that's how it goes in this world, where one life doesn't amount to much, and human relationships are pretty much non-existent. Nonetheless, I can send you to where I met him if you want.
Yeah, you can do, dude, but not today. Next time on Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, we're gonna go check up on our old friend. But until then, you guys take care now. Peace.